know a lot of people who sort of deal with this, they would describe it as a fear of being annihilated, where there's no room for them in the relationship. Either, for example, a parent may not make room for the child's emotions and not allow the child to be emotional. They may not have an empathetic listening ear, as it were, to be present with the child in their very dysregulated emotional state. A child in that emotional state can't think clearly. Their prefrontal cortex is not even fully developed yet, so they can't think clearly. They need a regulating presence of a parent. If they didn't get that, they'll try and get it elsewhere or through other behaviors such as addictions, thrill-seeking experiences, all these sorts of things.
Yeah, and I've been reading a book, No Drama Discipline. I don't remember who by. Okay. I think it was Haidt or somebody else probably. But No Drama Discipline talks about like the need of a child to be able to recognize how, like, learn how to regulate their emotions by their parents, through their parents. And so when you do something like Timeout, which I thought was just the natural consequence of, being, a troublesome kid, like, I thought that was just chill. I thought that was good. I thought that was what you do to discipline. Even to today, I'm learning through the book right now, but he talks about like how when you put a child in timeout, you are now removing them from the safest person in their life, the person who ought to be showing them how to cope and regulate their emotions and all these things. You're actively separating yourself from them. Like, what does that do for that kid? It's like, that's not helpful. Okay, so we have to figure out a different way of doing that.
So two things come to mind about helping a child regulate their emotions. Number one, some parents will do this who are trauma informed. They will regulate the child by demonstrating empathy with the child. In other words, if a child is throwing a tantrum, the parent will very calmly say, "Okay, my turn," and then the parent will cry out loud,
Nice.
and then stop and very calmly say, "Okay, your turn." And so the child and the parent learn to relate to each other in this way. There's a mirror neural function that's going on here. Really pretty amazing.
That's interesting.
And so once the child sees the same emotions demonstrated in the parent, the child doesn't feel alone and so desperate, and they're open to being regulated by the parent who's empathetic to the same emotions. Another strategy that's really cool, I just came across this, is colors, using colors. So when a child is really frustrated, take them, and I admit, I am doing this without having practiced it myself. I'm taking this from another parent's word who is a psychologist and has written on this topic.
Well, both of us. Both of us are relating in that way.
So this psychologist's father uses colors, and when their child is emotional, he'll start pointing out colors. Where's red or where's blue in the room? Can you point at blue for me?
Interesting.
And another thing that's really interesting, this father says, something that's pretty curious is they'll look at something that's a yellow color, for example, and then they'll tell the child, "Oh, isn't that green?" And in this subtle twist, the emotions continue to die down, but then the prefrontal cortex kicks in. No, that's yellow. And so there's subtle ways, to relate to a child emotionally and relationally, obviously, that will help them to regulate these really states of disorganization that can be learned and then used later on in life. And you're not going to end up with a child that is in trouble with the law, that is addicted to substances or habits or relationships. So it is very, in a healthy way, confident and independent.
Yeah, and I love how so that was also kind of mirrored in No Drama Discipline. I mean, I'm like 3 chapters in all frankness right now, but like he talks about like your child cannot actually like think or process when they're in that emotional state to a certain age. To a certain age, their brain isn't there's no interlink highway between emotion and logic, and so like you have to pull them out of the emotion, or like, you know, allow them time to sit in the emotion, let it die down before you can bring in the logic. There's no highway link between them. So they talk about that as well. It's interesting to me though on this topic when bringing it into we have a friend who works in a blue collar job, and I was telling him about what I was reading in this book that's very similar to what you're bringing up, and I was like, man, and as you know, blue collar workers are essentially just grown up children, but they never really learned how to regulate their emotions, so they're still very much children. It's interesting because if you were to allow them some time to let them get their emotions out and let them feel heard, they won't be as mad. They don't necessarily care about being right. They just care about being heard. And if they feel heard, then you can start to like explain and have a useful dialogue. So I think that there's a lot of ways that, you know, studying even say the psychology of children, like you said at the beginning, because we don't grow out of that. We kind of just grow into that more over time. And so utilizing the research within that field to understand how to have productive conversations today. I mean, him and I were just having a conversation with an older lady that is very against the belief systems that you and I posit, and he was talking to me afterwards like, man, how you handled that was just crazy. Like she was, you know, going off the rails, and you were just very calm and collected and knew how to like regulate with her. And I was like, because there were certain times in the conversation I heard that she was just purely emotional. Like I kept asking her, okay, he saved us, Jesus saved us from what? She couldn't answer that question. She had to flip it to something else. No. But you don't understand. It's just very emotional. Like I'm not going to even, you know, maintain the conversation. So I asked it 3 different times, and that third time I realized she's in a very emotional state. I'm not going to be able to get, you know, through to her, have a productive dialogue unless we just, you know, calm down, move on, and then maybe later on I can bring it back up. And so I brought that up, and it's interesting how we can apply it in subtle ways. Even like, I wonder if you know, misidentifying colors would work in a blue collar workforce.
Yeah, well, I think part of what's going on as well is, you know, theology is one of those areas that really sort of touches on the deep-seated emotions that we have. For some, their theology is a deeply held sense of safety. It is a deeply held sense of community, a sense of family, an upbringing. If you're familiar with spiral dynamics, it is very much with the contemporary society is very much within the blue area, which is purely moral, a sense of values, which is what is rampant and mainstream. Not necessarily wrong, but you know, there's for lack of a better word, more mature areas. So I think anytime when you can allow this space for someone to
is this kind of what you're talking?
Yeah, that's
can you explain that a little bit?
So spiral dynamics basically it concerns your worldview, and it starts out with a very primitive tribal aspect where there are the events in the world are explained through deeply spiritual and religious meaning. It's very precarious, very capricious, and then there's a little bit more formal.
You're talking down at the very bottom of the tornado.
Tribal,
It's just
mystic,
chaos, kind of.
evil spirits, good spirits. Everything is a battle, and this is a very low level,
Black and white.
And then as you progress upward in understanding how the world really works and how social relationships work, you begin to see what is more integrative and what is more exclusionary in social functions. So basically what you were doing in this conversation is you were allowing this woman to have space to sort of stop and to really reflectively think about what it is that she's feeling and what it is that she believes, and to express it. And in doing that, you have the opportunity as her conversation partner to mirror that back to her, and she can hear what she believes from your perspective as you recount it. You mirror that to her, and then she can correct you, and she'll have a bit of a more a calmer state to do that.